So I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The Office is probably my favorite TV show of all time. It definitely has the highest rewatch value of any show I've ever seen, and over the years, many convincing fan theories have been created by Office fanatics. I've narrowed it down to the best 4, so here it is. 4 theories about The Office, too good not to be true. This one is probably my favorite theory, if you can even call it that. In all honesty, it's more of a cleverly written hidden detail, but since it's only briefly mentioned and hugely important to the development of the storyline, I'll say it's close enough. That being said, if you can remember all the way back in season 3, Jim comes back from Stanford along with Karen, and the two begin to date. Pam plays it off like her and Jim are just friends, but it's pretty clear to the viewer that she wants to be more than that. On the other hand, Jim seems content with Karen, but at Phyllis's wedding he says this.
Hypothetically, if I thought Pam was interested, then... No, it's totally hypothetical.
So it's obvious that they're both into each other, it's just that while Jim has already expressed his feelings...
Mom, I don't want to do that. I want to be more than that.
I can't.
Pam hasn't reciprocated and only remains her normal friendly self. This continues until the art gallery episode, where Roy shows up with his brother and gives Pam a few disinterested compliments before leaving.
I show up with my brother and no one from work is here? That's pretty cool, huh?
Then Oscar and his boyfriend Gil arrive, and this happens.
Meaning real art takes courage, okay, and honesty.
Well, those aren't Pam's strong points.
Yeah, exactly. That's why this is motel art.
At first glance, this just seems like a mean comment that was accidentally overheard by Pam. But I'm willing to argue that this honest assessment of Pam's character is the driving force behind her change in personality, and the real reason why she finally gets with Jim. The very next episode, it's apparent that Pam is making an active effort to become more assertive.
You have to come to stuff with me. I'm serious. If you're gonna be my boyfriend, you have to do boyfriend things.
She even says so in her cutaway interview.
I've decided that I'm going to be more honest. I'm gonna start telling people what I want directly. So, look out world, cause old Pammy is getting what she wants.
And keeping with their promise of being more honest and direct with people, Pam spills the beans and tells Roy that she kissed Jim at the casino night, thereby ending their relationship for good. Later in the season on Beach Day, Pam finally tells Jim how she feels about him and how he was the reason she canceled her wedding. And the very next episode, they go on their first date.
Everything is gonna be totally
Pam. Sorry. Are you free for dinner tonight?
Yes.
At first glance, the accounting department of Dunder Mifflin seems innocent enough. Nothing really seems out of the ordinary, but what if that's exactly how they want to portray themselves to everyone in the office? Even if you don't agree with me, you really can't argue the fact that the three of them had the perfect disguise for doing illegal activities like money laundering. As the series progresses, Kevin seems to get dumber and dumber, which I honestly think is just a cover to avoid any suspicion.
Kevin, do you feel okay?
Me feel good, body strong, sleep big last night.
In reality, Kevin is not as stupid as he comes off. He predicted the fact that Roy was going to attack Jim a year before it happened, won a tournament in the World Series of Poker, and was also the first person in the office to perceive that Jim and Pam were dating, and the same with Andy and Aaron. At first, Angela is probably the last person you'd expect to be involved in a money laundering scheme. She tries very hard to give off the vibe of being a good Christian girl who does nothing wrong, but we all know that's some BS.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
She's been known to do some pretty immoral things, like cheating on Andy with Dwight, and then being noticeably pleased when they duke it out in the parking lot. Angela even lies to Dwight about him being Philip's father. So when I think of her, I see a person who thinks the rules apply to everyone, except herself. And in my opinion, she would have no problem laundering money to make some cash for herself and her many cats. Oscar's disguise is that he's one of the most normal people in the office. He never gets too crazy, and is definitely intelligent enough to pull off a money laundering operation like this. One scene that ties him into all this is in the episode The Boat, where Oscar tries to frame Kevin to get him fired. He shows Toby some documents which supposedly implicate Kevin in embezzling money from the company. But later on in the episode, he tells Toby that he was actually lying and that the documents were in fact fake. But I honestly don't believe Oscar was lying. I think instead the documents were real, and he either got cold feet due to feeling bad about Kevin getting fired, or because of the fact that he was potentially implicating himself as well. Something else to note is that Dunder Mifflin Scranton is continually the most profitable branch in the whole company, which doesn't make a lot of sense because Dunder Mifflin has branches in bigger cities like Syracuse and Buffalo. And yet time and time again, much to the surprise of people like David Wallace, they always come out on top, which you think would raise some eyebrows at corporate, but do they really want to know how the Scranton branch is so profitable? Putting aside how Michael should have been fired years ago, in the episode Business Ethics, Meredith admits to sleeping with the supplier in exchange for discounts and Outback Steakhouse coupons. Holly ends up reporting this to corporate, only to be told that in an economy as difficult as this one, a discount should be appreciated no matter how it's gotten. This means that even if corporate detected something weird going on at Scranton, they may well ignore it as long as the profits keep coming. Finally, let's talk a little bit about their post office careers. Once the cameras are gone, Oscar runs for office, Angela marries Dwight, and Kevin runs a bar. Running for office isn't cheap, and I think now that the cameras are gone, Oscar is comfortable using his ill-gotten money. Same as Kevin. Kevin explains how he got the bar, but the story is completely ridiculous. I mean, he claimed that so many people wanted to buy him drinks that the bar just decided it was cheaper to make him a partner. I think that Kevin just bought the bar with his dirty money and totally made that story up. Angela is married to Dwight, who runs a successful farm, so she doesn't need to use her cash. So I saw this theory online and it just made so much sense I had to include it. I'm sure everyone remembers Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration. How could you forget?
Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration. Stanley Hudson. Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
Ryan Howard.
Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
But wasn't it kinda weird how he always introduced himself by saying Vance Refrigeration? I mean, who does that? Well, there's actually a reason behind it. And no, he doesn't just like how it sounds, and he isn't shoving his company down the throats of everyone he meets. At least I hope not. But instead, Bob Vance is getting 100% free advertisement for his company through the documentary team and the cameras that are always present at Dunder Mifflin.
Love Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
I would be very surprised if Bob introduced himself like that to every person he meets, but I guess we'll never know for sure. In my opinion, Toby Flenderson is the Scranton Strangler, and he's given us plenty of clues to prove it is in fact him.
Toby has mentally checked out since June.
Oscar says I checked out, huh?
So after an awkward moment in front of the entire office, Toby announces that he's moving to Costa Rica. He leaves and immediately breaks his neck ziplining only 3 days after arriving. I think this event not only results in Toby breaking his neck, but also the breaking of his spirit. Costa Rica seemed to be the only thing he had to look forward to in life, and very possibly his last chance for happiness. In Scranton, he is hated and constantly bullied by Michael Scott.
Who let the lemon head into the room? You are a waste of life, and you should give up.
Always seems to be in a deep depression, went through a very painful divorce.
Toby is in HR, which technically means he works for corporate, so he's really not a part of our family. Also, he's divorced, so he's really not a part of his family.
And to top it all off, Pam fell in love with Jim, and not himself.
Yeah, Toby, was this your fun little way of congratulating us?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I think all these factors contributed to Toby's mental breakdown in the hospital following his accident, and somewhere along the line, he became the Scranton Strangler. The first victim of the Scranton Strangler likely came in Season 5, Episode 12, as Meredith can be heard telling Oscar about a murder that happened close to her house. Nothing more is heard about the Strangler till the birth of Jim and Pam's child in the episode Delivery Part 2. In the episode, Andy tells the camera that he planned on giving the Halperts a framed copy of the day's newspaper to commemorate Cece's birth, but because the birth carried over to the next day, he had to swap out the paper with one that read, "The Scranton Strangler Strikes Again." Then, in the episode viewing party, everyone coincidentally huddles around Toby's desk to watch the apprehension of the Strangler. Notice how everyone in the office is watching the police standoff. Everyone except Toby. Not only is Toby absent from work, but during the chase, his work phone starts ringing. And since Aaron isn't at reception to redirect the call, this means that someone is calling Toby directly. Things start to get even weirder when you consider that the same car was shown in the parking lot on an earlier episode. Seriously, what are the chances of that? Seeing as the car was in the Dunder Mifflin parking lot, it's not too out of the question that the car belongs to someone working in the building. And is it possible that that someone is Toby Flenderson? It makes sense on a couple different levels. It would explain the mysterious phone call directly to Toby's desk right in the middle of the televised chase. Could that have been his ex-wife or someone calling to ask if that was in fact his car on TV? It also gives Toby a possible reason to frame George Howard Scubb, as they have the same car.
When I was on the jury, the Scranton Strangler. Sure. I always thought he might have been set up, but I felt pressured to convict.
As we all know, Toby was selected as one of the jurors for the Scranton Strangler case, and they eventually end up finding him guilty for the murders. The conviction actually causes a ton of distress to Toby, and he even exclaims that the jury got the wrong man on a handful of occasions.
A man's being put to death. I was part of the verdict, and I'm not so sure he's guilty anymore.
I think Toby is feeling this way because he now realizes the gravity of his actions and how an innocent man is locked up forever for something that he himself did. The guilt Toby feels over his part in the conviction of George Howard Scubb eventually leads him to arrange a meeting at the prison. While there, Toby is attacked and leaves cradling his neck. I believe that Toby confessed his guilt in the Strangler murders and is then understandably attacked by George Howard Scubb, agitating Toby's prior neck injury. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.